One of the things that's happening, as you rightly say, that unless the squads get made up to 30, England have got some very, very tasty selection issues coming up for the manager Gareth Southgate in the next couple of months. I mean, Jesse Lingard's form, for a start, he's a favourite of the manager, is pushing him right into the reckoning, I believe. It also makes me wonder what the hell was going on at Manchester United with him. If he's that good a footballer, why can't he make the bench for Manchester United? That's a separate issue.
Well, he made it under Jose Mourinho, as I pointed it out to you last week, Dan. In fact, Jose Mourinho got a great tune out of Jesse Lingard, I think.
Well, you're convinced that Jose Mourinho is a great football manager, Sean, and that is a view to which you are entitled in a democracy.
He didn't do it for Luke Shaw, as I think Henry's pointed out this week, but he certainly did it for Lingard.
Well, Jesse's making him suck a thoughtful tooth now, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I'm sure. We'll talk about Jack Grealish in a second, but the one that's really making the headlines, of course, was the omission of Trent Alexander-Arnold, particularly as he found a bit of his old form at the weekend in that 3-0 victory against Arsenal. The papers were full of it. For club but not country, Klopp mystified as England ignored the world's best right back, in quotations there, and it was Andy Hunter in The Guardian. Daily Telegraph, Chris Bascom, Klopp hits out at Southgate over Alexander-Arnold's snub. Come clean, Gareth. This is Paul Joyce in The Times. Klopp says Southgate needs to explain the real reason for dropping Alexander-Arnold, as Liverpool manager doesn't believe it's down to the defender's form, which I must say was a piece that put more heat than light on the subject. I have no idea what Paul was hinting at there. But England won all 3 matches without previously undroppable Alexander-Arnold. Henry, there's obviously something going on with him and the manager. The manager doesn't fancy him in some way. I think that's what's going on.
Well, we asked him enough times over the past week, and I think that he came up with this argument. Well, it's about form. So I said to him, "How come Eric Dyer's in the squad and Ezri Konsa isn't? If we're doing it purely on form?" And then you have a debate about how long is form. Should loyalty come into it? He's obviously very loyal to Jordan Pickford. So look, I think it comes down to the fact that he has doubts about his defensive qualities, and I think Klopp is completely right to actually say, well, Southgate. I actually think Klopp handled it pretty well because he was trying to be respectful to Southgate. He was trying to say, listen, it's his squad. He's got to make the decisions. He pointed out that England have got great strength in that era, but also he's going to back his player. And I think in the grand scheme of things, Klopp is clearly a better manager than Southgate, and has got, to use your phrase, a consistent tune out of Alexander-Arnold. I just think there was also, if you look at how many young, purely technical players England have at the moment, probably 4. You'd say Foden, Greenwood, Mount, and Alexander-Arnold. Alexander-Arnold has got Sean and I used to stand on the touchline watching England train and watch Paul Scholes hit a ball. Hit a ball so true. None of this fading, none of this uncertainty. He would absolutely ping it. And if you look at Alexander-Arnold, he can do that. And I think if you've got a technical talent, let me finish. If you've got a technical talent of his quality, his fearlessness, and we know fear is the key so often with England, then a coach like Southgate should believe in his own abilities to actually improve his defensive side if he does feel that there is an issue there. And clearly, there are better individual, perhaps Wan-Bissaka can't get anywhere near the squad. He's probably the best one-on-one defender and actually closing down a winger. So, look, again, it comes on to this thing. Is Southgate too cautious? Are we actually going to attack teams? And I think if you've got Alexander-Arnold in the squad, then you've got a better chance.
But does he actually have to explain himself? Why does he have to? Why is he not allowed to just pick his squad? Managers leave players out all the time at club level, and if we go to a manager, explain yourself, they go, I've just decided to leave him out, pick somebody else. So why does Gareth Southgate have to explain it?
Because his explanation was nonsense.
No, but why does he have to?
Because
why is it compulsory?
Because that's how press conferences work, Sean. A manager comes out and we ask him questions.
I know that, but he doesn't have to say why he's left Alexander-Arnold out. He can simply say, I just prefer these other players. He doesn't have to go into a detailed explanation of it. He just doesn't fancy having him in the squad. Why does he have to explain it?
Because he threw in the form argument. And then we immediately listed all the other players who were out of form, who were in the squad. So, I mean, have a word. I think you had some reporters in on these press conferences, Sean, and I think they were completely as mystified with what Southgate was saying.
No, I'm just saying, why is it obligatory that he has to do that? I'm just asking you. I've been in many, many press conferences with many, many managers when they just don't tell you.
Let me ask you the question in reverse. Let me ask the question in reverse, Sean. Let's say you ask the England manager a very pointed question about selection matter, and he sits there and bats it back to you. I guess you'd be complaining about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be happy either. But the trouble is, once Southgate says, well, I tell you what, I've left him out because I don't think he does X. I don't know. I don't think he tracks back well enough. And the furore that would cause another storm. So he probably feels he's better off just saying, I feel his form's not up to it at the moment.
Well,
he probably feels he's better off doing that.
That says plenty about me, you, Henry, and our colleagues in the mass media.
No, but it's true, isn't it? That's what happens. Of course we want to ask the questions. Of course we want the answers.
I would love him to say.
But I'm just putting yourself in his shoes. From his point of view, why does he have to do that? He's perfectly entitled, if you like, to say, I just prefer other players. I don't think he's in form.
I wish we lived in a world where he could say that.
Well, I would rather he answered the question as well. You're not quite getting it. I would rather he answered the question, but I don't think it's obligatory for him to do so. He picks a squad. Whatever squad he picks for the Euros will say, why didn't you pick X? Whatever happens, there'll always be people who say, you should have had him and you should have had him. And weirdly, we have been well off for right backs recently. It is a strange position in that regard. And there are people like, you take somebody like Kieran Trippier, he's somebody who did brilliantly for Southgate in the 2018 World Cup, now plays for a better team than he did then. Reece James has been a very good player for him, coming through just recently. Kyle Walker, nobody would leave Kyle Walker out, but you can also play him maybe in central defence if he plays his three. So there is an argument why Alexander-Arnold isn't in there. It's not against the law to leave Alexander-Arnold out of the squad.
But Sean, I think it's a bit more respectful to your readers and my readers and Danny's listeners and whoever is tuning in when Sky hosts the press conference.
I don't disagree with
you.
To
actually explain that to them. I also think, Sean, what is interesting is, you say, and I agree with you, we often focus on the individuals who are left out, particularly when the 23/25 are named. But I can't remember actually a reaction like this one, not simply in the media, where we all go off and say, well, this is wrong, the form argument is nonsense, but actually on people who played the game. Gary Lineker's reaction, Micah Richards did a fantastic column in the Mail,
Yeah.
Jamie Carragher in the Telegraph as well, all just scratching their very distinguished heads and saying, why has he left a player of this quality out?
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying it's not obligatory on his part, even though we do want the answer. I mean, keep saying this forever. But
I actually think Trent's got a problem now, because I think Kyle Walker will go because he can double up in a three as centre back.
Yeah.
I think Reece James is the England manager's idea of a good, strong defensive player who can get forward as well. So unless he's going to pick three right backs in the squad, I suspect that Trent has really got his work cut out.
I just asked Henry this. Do you
Yeah.
think it's because, Henry, that he may play 3-5-2 and then he thinks Alexander-Arnold isn't the right man to be one of the wide men in a 3-5-2?
Well, you could actually argue it might even be even more suited to it.
Well,
if you're saying that he's got defensive issues.
I'm not arguing about it. I'm just saying, do you think that might be the reason?
Well, we thought that in advance of the Poland game. I think everyone was expecting him to go to a back three, and he stuck with the form. We talked about it. I think it was the first question. I mean, we sort of asked him in these press conferences, Sean. They're quite good. You should come along to one. And so I asked him and said, are you going to go with a back three or a back four?
Too important for that, Henry. Come off it.
I know. But I think I think the fact that we're talking about it, that so many people have been talking about it, shows the just bemusement that Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't in the squad. A player who's won a Champions League, who's won a Premier League as well. He's an outstanding player. Where I agree, and it's good to see Sean in his new role as Southgate spokesman. England do have riches at right back, which is great to see. And Sean, that shirt will have to go if you're going to get the FA blazer on over it.